You're listening to the Basketball Lab podcast with your hosts Mark Shannon, Mark Clark, and Marco Corona. They'll discuss all the top news and stories from around the basketball world while giving their opinion and insight. Now, here are your hosts.
Welcome back to another episode of the Basketball Lab podcast. I'm your host, Mark Shannon, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Mark Clark and Marco Corona. You know, today was a good day, you know. There was a new president in the United States.
Yes,
Was
sir.
that,
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, there's been so much news in
I was wondering why it's so damn sunny.
But yeah, you know what I mean? But we got to talk about basketball today. You know what I mean? We got to talk about basketball. With Kyrie coming back, there's been a lot of injuries. COVID's taken full hold. I don't know if the players are following the protocols or what, but taking the calls. But I mean, I want to start with the Raptors. We talked about it last week. The Raptors were struggling. They were struggling out of the gate. You know, they were near the bottom of the pack in a lot of offensive categories, a lot of categories. They're now 5-8. They're playing the Miami Heat right now, but they've won
back-to-back
right.
wins.
They've won 3 straight, but I don't know what is it that's changed so far in the last couple of weeks that the Raptors are starting to put it together a little bit more.
Defense. That to me is, you can see the how the Raptors generate their offense. And again, the Raptors are not exactly, you know, the Golden State Warriors of 3-4 years ago as far as offense, but I think their defense is finally starting to catch up. And we talked about this in the beginning of the season, right? That the defenses are lagging behind, right? And the Raptors were never really top heavy on offense up front anyway, so it was a struggle. They weren't getting any production from the 5 spot to start with.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're really playing with a 4-man rotation. If you really think about it, right? It's like playing with a deficit. It's like playing without a shortstop, right? And now things
An
finally,
extra guy committed in fouls.
right, right. And then I think that West Coast road trip, which, if I'm not mistaken, boys, they split, right?
They went 3-1.
No, they went 2-2, weren't they not? Yeah, they went 2-2. They split it.
2-2?
Yeah, they split it.
They
They won
lost?
the first and the last game, and I think they lost it 2 in between. Nonetheless, it was a good road trip, and I think a lot of things sort of got fixed. Their efficiency got better, and I think they're finally starting to come out of it a little bit. The guys are trying, you know, they're finding their spots. I think still that there's a lot of work to be done with this team. You know, we just saw Alex Len got waived, and I still don't understand the reasons. I don't know if you guys have the reasons as to why, if it's just to make room for a roster spot. But again, I think the defensive intensity has turned it up a little bit and has made the Raptors sort of, you can kind of see they're getting back to who they were, right? So again, to me, get back to 500. That's the first goal, and then take it from there.
Yeah, so just they went 1-3 on that road
They're
trip.
1-3. My bad.
They
I shouldn't question.
No,
Yes.
the biggest.
Come on, bro. You know.
It's the Red Cup.
They had the big win, the offensive win where they scored 144 points against the Kings, right? But
Kings,
Right.
yeah, that's the only win. Yeah.
I mean, in all honesty, they lost 2 of those games by literally 1
2
point,
points,
right?
Maybe that's right.
Golden State and
Portland.
and Blazers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But back to your question, Ben. As Marco said, it's defense. It's just the fundamentals of playing basketball that they kind of somehow have kind of figured out. And I mean, as you saw, if you've been watching, the as you mentioned, Marco, the centerpiece is the problem. The person in the 5 spot, and for some reason we haven't really seen Nurse start. He hasn't really started Boucher yet, but what he was doing is starting another guy, and then a quick switch out, right? After the first 4 minutes or so, you'll see Boucher come in the game, or even before, which he's been filling that spot really, really well. But it's just a defense, and other than defense, it may not seem like they have a lot of new players, but they do have quite a few new players working into the rotation, and Nurse trying to do his thing to figure out a good lineup and which team works best off the bench, which guys works best starting, and stuff, even though we really haven't seen the starting lineup change much. But it's just them finding they kind of all the players are just finding their spot. I mean, we have OG. He's now making his shots. He's hitting down threes. He's good. He's good as usual on defense. We have Stanley Johnson, who I mean, he just blows my mind right now.
I haven't hit send on my apology letter to Stanley Johnson.
for him. Yeah, it's
I'm waiting.
I'm waiting. You remember that game in the bubble when he went off?
Yep.
It's like
I think it was against
that
Denver
bubble.
or something.
Yeah. So it's that Stanley Johnson we have. He's hitting down shots. He's solid on defense, and the team is just finding again. They're just finding their footing, and good on them. They've won the last 3. So let's just hope they'll keep it rolling.
Yep.
Yeah, I think, a lot of it, we talked about it before, their defense was there. Defense, for some reason, when it comes to sports, you remember defense. Defense is always the thing you go back to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Their offense struggled out of the gate. Like, they were in the bottom half on offense. They've climbed their way into the top 15 in terms of offensive rating, you know what I mean? So they've climbed up and they've gotten better. A lot of their record is misleading in a sense because they've lost a lot of close games. It's not like they've been blown out. You know what I mean? They've lost a lot of close games. You talk about the 2 that we just mentioned on the West Coast road swing. That's 2 close games that they would have been 500. You know what I mean? If they would have won those games, but they're playing better defensively. They got to cut back on the turnovers. Turnovers are killing them. Turnovers are killing them right now. And like we said it last week, and I'll bring it up again in terms of they need a big man. They need another big man who could get rebounds. Unless Baines is going to turn it on and start grabbing rebounds like left, right, and center, he's kind of wasting space out there in a sense because he's not really doing anything offensively. He's not really grabbing rebounds like what they need, and they're in the bottom half of rebounds on the defensive rebound side at least. And I mentioned maybe if they get themselves back into playoff contention, get into that 500, whatever it is, come the playoff time. There's a big man in Cleveland named Andre Drummond. What
was his name?
Andre Drummond. You know what I mean? I'm not saying the Raptors are going to get him or not. I'm just saying that a big man.
No, that's what you're saying.
No. I'm just saying that if any team would be willing to
showed interest before too,
and if any team would be willing to trade him, if anything, any team would be willing to be a trading partner for a big man, it would be Cleveland, due to the fact that they just traded for Jared Allen. You know what I mean? That's got to be a contingency plan. They don't trade Jared Allen to play him up, put him on the bench.
And Jared Allen, correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, is younger, right? Than Drummond. So you always keep the younger guy.
Well, exactly,
and
I assume cheaper.
Yes, absolutely,
right.
And that's what I'm saying. So I mean, like a guy like that, or somebody of that thing where they can get something for him and bring him in if they're in the playoff contention or whatever. I think that's what the Raptors have to do. But I guess
didn't guy grab like 23 boards last week out of one game?
23 boards, yeah. He's leading the league in rebounding. I think he's got 15 rebounds a game.
Can you imagine that? Right? Number 5 in the middle, clogging up the middle for the Raptors under Nick Nurse's system.
Yeah,
Jared Allen is just 22, by the way.
Yeah, he's very young.
Would you, if you could, is there any possible way that the Raptors would look at Jared Allen instead of Andre Drummond?
I think so.
I think they would, but I don't think Cleveland would be willing to move him. I think,
it's about what Cleveland wants, right? Like they want the younger guy.
They've already said he could be their future. So there's no way they're going to let go of a guy like Jared Allen.
And
unless the deal is really good.
Who would you move from the Raps? I mean, Norm? Move a guard, I guess, expiring contract?
Well, yeah, that's what you'd have to. I mean, you're not going to get Andre Drummond for cheap. You're not going to get him for a bunch of picks.
And teams are not going to get hoodwinked by Masai again. Right?
No, exactly. So. You're right, especially, Cleveland, they're already they've already got a lot of young players. So, I mean, like I said, he fits into that. Jared Allen fits that mold of the Colin Sextons, all those guys that are on that team right now, the Darius Garlands, are all young. So he fits that mold that they could build this team around the young guys. But back onto the Raptors, a guy I've been impressed with, and we haven't really talked about him. He's kind of flown under the radar, even though he signed his contract, is Fred VanVleet. I mean, he's had a good start to the season so far this year. And not many people are talking about him in Toronto, especially because Chris Boucher has been playing outstanding. You know what I mean? Kyle Lowry's playing the same way he's normally played. You know what I mean? He hasn't had really any things. So, like, I haven't been really focusing on Fred VanVleet in terms of the way he's played. He's put a lot of he's averaging a good amount of points. He's also putting up assists as well. And again, tonight he's already got almost 20 points through 3 quarters or 2.5 quarters right now. You know what I mean? So he's pretty consistent since he signed that contract. So that's one guy I want to give a shout out in terms of that. You know, when we saw his little Toronto man's thing the other day where he was like 8 for 8 or 7 for 7. You know what I mean?
7 for 7.
7 for 7. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Can we put that up on our IG for a good followers to see, or is that?
Yeah, no, I could probably find it and put it on our story.
If anybody's,
it's on the Raptors page.
Yeah, I know, but if anybody hasn't got a chance to it, it'll be up on our site, on the IG as well. Fans. And if you live in Toronto, oh my goodness, it's gold. I laughed so much. I'm gonna watch it again after this podcast. It's so good. But to your point, and also by the way, he's averaging 19 and 6. Yeah, those are not pedestrian numbers.
No,
right? He is earning his paycheck, but at the same time, I think the reason that we haven't really paid attention or given Federico, as much credit as Boucher and whatnot is, I think, because we expected this from Federico, right?
We've seen what he can do over the years.
Right? We know what we're gonna get, right? He got his money, this and that. I don't think any of us can sit here and we're ever worried about, okay, now he got paid, is he gonna drop off? Because sometimes when guys get paid, there's a tendency to try too hard, right? And then your play suffers. Yeah. He's been literally, and I know why they call him Steady Freddy, because he's just been steady, right? And Fred VanVleet's never going to give you 45, 44 points, whatever it is, but he's just going to be steady. He does what he needs to do to help you win. That's why he's a second fiddle to Kyle. And you can see the similarities, how they run the floor and, how they're team first. And I know that, I think was it Fred that took a tech for Stanley Johnson the other day?
Yeah.
To me, that's leadership, right? And that, to me, you can't put a price on. So I agree with you. Shout out to Fred VanVleet, because he's playing great.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, as you said, it's what's expected, or what we expect of him, right?
Yeah.
We don't expect Fred to be any less than what he is right now. I mean, when it comes to running the floor, he's the floor general out there.
Yeah.
Obviously alongside with Kyle. But whenever the ball is in his hand, you can know that 98% of the time you're going to get a high quality shot out of that play, and he's going to go and do his thing. I mean, whenever he's almost like a replica or clone of Kyle. Whenever the team needs 100%. him, he's going to show up. Clutch. He's going to do what he's going to do. He's going to go out there and get those buckets or steals, which we've seen a lot of it from him.
I think Fred VanVleet does a lot of things that don't get caught on highlights, right? And they don't get top 10 this and that.
A lot of low key things that really has huge impacts on the game.
He does winning things. That's what matters, right? And
winning plays.
You can hope for the lob and the behind the back pass and this and that, but to me, it's all about winning plays, and that's key. And that's what I love about Freddie V. So
yeah, you know what? Speaking of another floor general, he just made his return tonight after a long, drawn-out process for personal reasons.
It's just a pause.
I mean, we're not gonna. I mean, we don't know what it was, but I mean, that's what he said. But Kyrie Irving made his return tonight to the Brooklyn Nets after the trade of James Harden. So it's the first time they're playing together. I don't know. Does he buy into this new team that they have now that he's back and supposedly he's cleared his head and he's back and ready to play?
He's such a hard guy to read because, like we said and we've talked about it, his talent is off the hook. There's no doubt about it. But we don't know where and clearly, and I say this with all due respect and all joking aside, I think that his heart is in the right place off the court. Yeah. Right. And I can't sit here and tear a strip off of him for everything that he does. There's some stuff that you're like, what are you doing? But a lot of that stuff is basketball on the court related stuff. So to your point, can he buy in? I don't have the answer, and I don't know if anybody does because we haven't seen this play out yet. right? So right now, this team, the big three, their big three is in the honeymoon stage. And the honeymoon stage is always the, happy, and you're doing things that everybody likes and everybody's chipping in this and that. What happens when things get tough?
Yeah.
Right? Because what if, and again, I'm not trying to make light of a situation. What if Kyrie decides to have another pause?
You're right.
So then what? Right? Because at this point, with this trade, what Brooklyn has done is obviously they're top heavy. They have 3 elite stars, but their depth has suffered, in my opinion, for the long run. For the long run, okay? Right now, it doesn't matter because they're just, bulldozing people. But what happens when they actually going to need Kyrie? What if James Harden is not having the best game? What if KD, knock on wood, gets injured or this and that? Like, is he going to be there? To me, that's the question. Can he buy in? Maybe the answer is, if he wants to, yes. Does he want to? I don't know. I have no idea. He is the biggest enigma. That's the word that I was looking for, I think, in the NBA that we've seen in a long time.
I mean, will Kyrie buy into this team? That's not a question that not even Kyrie knows. I mean, wow. he's just so unstable and unpredictable. But the thing with this guy is he'll take a break for 4 or 5 games, however long it is, and he comes back and drop like 30, 35 the first game he plays. That's just how he is, right?
But that's talent.
Yeah.
He is. He's very talented.
That's talent. And
no doubt. No question about that. Very talented player. But his headspace is you could see personally he's fighting some things that at this point I can't say Kyrie is a player that wants to win a championship.
So what does he want to do on the court?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's the thing.
I mean,
this minute he wants a pause and he wants to be, I don't know, marching for justice and peace.
Which
and
is
the next
totally
minute,
fine.
There's totally nothing fine. Wrong with that.
But I think that if your employer is going to invest that much time and money into you, then I think that you owe it to them to tell them, listen, this is what I feel like I need to do.
Yeah.
Right? Now, unless Brooklyn is trying to keep everything under wraps, then I blame them as well because, and again, we don't have to know all the details, and that's fine. If it's personal, it's personal. But you can't tell me, number one, and again, going back to last week, that, Steve Nash wasn't blindsided by comments that Kyrie made on the podcast. Then Steve Nash was asked, where's Kyrie? And Steve Nash literally said, I have no idea.
Yeah.
How does your boss not know where you are?
Yeah.
We all know if we pull that in our own jobs.
Yeah, what would happen? Yeah, for sure.
I would have to do this podcast every day.
I mean, it's
because I have nothing else to do.
Yeah.
So I don't know what Kyrie's doing.
Yeah. And I said it last week. You can't have 1 foot in, 1 foot out. It's got to be 2 feet in or 2 feet out right now. And I mean, and I think, a lot of it has to do with the pandemic and all that stuff, and I think a lot of it, and also the social injustices and stuff, and that's why he didn't end up going back to play in the bubble last season, right? But I think a lot of it has to do that. But like I said, you have to be either 2 feet in or 2 feet out. Sorry, but I mean, based off his stats today, I mean he's got 2 feet in. He's got 28 points, right? 11 for 17 shooting.
Man.
So I mean, you can't.
It comes back like it's
exactly. He comes back and he plays just the same way he played before he left, took the pause. It's like he hasn't missed a beat.
And I think, sorry to cut you off, I think that's why I feel like he feels that he can do whatever he wants whenever he wants, because he knows that that if he goes away for 2 weeks and comes back, he can drop 28 at the half.
Yeah.
And then he can dip for 2 more weeks and come back and do exactly the same thing.
Yep.
So part of it is arrogance. It's this smug thing that he can say, listen, you are not allowed to criticize me because I'm Kyrie Irving and you're not.
So
if I feel like walking away for 2 weeks, that's none of your business, and that's fine. But when I come back, I'm going to do my thing, and you can't criticize me because this is what I do.
Having a Kyrie on your team is kind of like the situation that the Rockets were in with James Harden. It's just I run this shit. I do whatever I want to do because when I come back, I'm that good on the court.
Wow, I don't know how to match that. You caught me. I don't know if that's a block or a charge.
And I'm gonna throw another hypothetical out. Last week I threw a hypothetical out you guys. So he buys in. They're good. He plays the rest of the season, whether it's load management, he gets a game off here or there, whatever it is. He buys in. What does this mean for the rest of the league? Like, that's 3 players. We've seen what Harden's been able to do with KD so far while Kyrie's been out. And now we're seeing what Kyrie's been able to do with Harden and Kevin Durant. Like, what does this mean for the rest of the NBA? Like, that's going to be a tough team to beat when they're playing like they are tonight, 35 minutes plus.
Is your question based on what's going to happen for the remainder of the season?
Yeah.
Or in the playoffs? Because
just in general. In general, like what does it mean for the rest? If he buys in and he's playing the way he's playing, Harden's playing the way he could play, KD's playing the way he could play, like what does it mean for the rest of the league? Whether it's season, playoffs, whatever it is. Like,
go ahead.
If Kyrie buys in to the Brooklyn Nets, and is playing like how he's playing tonight, and those 3 players can mesh and James and KD play the way they played without Kyrie, and Kyrie comes into this mix, the league, the entire league is on notice. Remember that. And I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna go as far and say this: James Harden will win a championship in Brooklyn.
Okay. That's it. That's it. That's what you're saying. Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Here's the problem that I have with not what you said, but sort of with the question itself and the answer, because a guy of his status, you shouldn't put the word "if" in front of it, right? So to me, if you're asking this question,
that's based in his
Kyrie,
mental. Let's put
that aside for 1 second, because we don't know what that mental and again, that's a delicate conversation to have, and I don't want to make light of it because we're all going through stuff right now.
And like I said, hypothetically speaking, he buys in, everything is cool, he's good for the rest of the way.
Hypothetically, from a basketball perspective, it's a problem. Obviously, there's no doubt about it. In the East, that's how I'm going to answer your question. Okay, it's a problem for Giannis because Giannis didn't get Bogdanovic. All right, the Bucks did everything that they could everything possible to do to put this team ahead. So again, Brooklyn does not have to win the East.
No,
they don't have to. That's not their job. Their job is to get through the East, and I think that's a problem for Philly, for Milwaukee, for I don't know what Miami's going to do, et cetera, et cetera. At Boston, sorry, I forgot about those Green Goblins over there. And in the West, to me, it does put, I'm just going to say it, the Lakers on notice, per se. I don't think it's a massive hurdle, but I think it makes it extremely interesting. I still have the Lakers beating Brooklyn if that's what it comes down to. But for the East, it's a problem. For the West, they'll just have to stand by and watch to see if they either get to knock off the Lakers and maybe they lose to Brooklyn or whatever the case is, or we'll see. But I think it puts definitely the East on notice. That's for sure. I'll agree with you there. But I'm going to stop short of putting the league, because at the end of the day, to me, I'm looking at the Brooklyn Nets. The end game is to get to the finals, right? And that's the end game, right? I don't think their goal is to finish number 1 in the East. I don't think they need it, right? Especially, guys, let's face it, without any true home court advantage, no fans, etc. I don't necessarily. They're way too talented to need that shit. But if Kyrie Irving buys in, yeah, of course they're a problem in the East. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I mean, you look at it in terms of what they like today, stats wise. Mm-hmm. They've scored 113 points, Brooklyn. The 3 of them have 77 between the 3 of them. So 36 points between the rest of the team. And they've each played 35 plus minutes so far, going close to 40 minutes today. And like we said about the bench coming in the playoff times, if those guys are able to put up 35 to 40 minutes a game, you don't really need a bench. And if they're putting up 77 to 80 points a game, or even more than that, what team is going to be able to match that other than probably the Lakers, the Clippers, maybe with Kawhi and Paul George there. But
is that our first Clippers reference of the year?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I mean,
we need like something like.
Man, I know. You know, talking about the Clippers, we haven't really talked about them, but I do got to give a shout out. You know, we rode him so hard in the bubble last year, like in terms of like getting on him so hard, but he's played really well start this season, man. He's definitely put himself in terms of not MVP consideration, but he's played very well this season. I have to give him credit that he's put all that bull crap aside. And he's played, and he's been the Robin to Kawhi's Batman, basically.
You know he can't pardon you, right?
I'm not asking for a pardon. He's not in office anymore.
Wow. Wait, literally.
But no, you make a legit point, though.
I assume that you're talking about
Paul George.
I'm
going to say it. I'm not going to call him Pandemic P. You know what I mean? He's averaging almost 25 points a game this season. He's playing a lot better than he definitely did during the bubble.
So then we need to call him regular season George.
More or less, yeah. Because you know what? You're right. Yeah. Maybe we'll see what happens when it comes to the playoff time.
Playoffs.
Right. I think guys of his caliber, again, not to disrespect anybody, but they're going to be judged on what they do when it matters, which is in April, May, and June. Yeah. Right. This is why we always debate who the greatest are, et cetera, in every sport, because you can put up the numbers or not during the regular season, but when it counts the most, what is it that you're going to do? So I'm going to hold my judgment on Paul. You know what? I'll give him the credit for being regular season Paul George. Okay. I'm not going to be an ass. Okay. I'll give him the credit for being regular season George and playing well.
Is he from Detroit?
Detroit. Oh,
regular season.
Listen, first of all, I think this is literally the first time we've talked about Detroit on this podcast.
It is
so shout out to Detroit. Detroit, what? Give me a shout.
Other than free agency when they signed all those big men, you know what I mean? That was the only time we talked about that was it.
We edited that part.
I mean, you got to give credit where credit due. Of course, we've seen him done 180 compared to last season and being in the bubble.
I'm going to say 90, but anyways. Nah, it's 180.
Still going.
I'll shut up.
But yeah, we've seen him making, as you said, he's the Robin to Kawhi. He's making buckets. He's doing what he needed to or should have been doing since last season.
Yeah.
But yeah, you definitely see the improvement starting the season.
And in fairness, he's probably healthier than he was last year, right?
Yeah.
So,
and I mean,
I'll give him credit.
Chemistry too, right? With the guys there.
Right. And but let's not.
And he's got the money too, right?
Well, of course,
the money too. So now he's locked in. He's good.
Oh yeah, true.
Right?
But let's not
some uncertainty. Yeah.
Make no mistake. We remember what he said, and they made all the excuses in the world. So it's great that they're playing well, but guess what? They should be playing well. Because that team is a very well-constructed team. I think they're missing something else. I don't know what it is, but we shouldn't be surprised. If you're elite, right? If that's what people argue about, then this is what you should be doing. So good for you.
This is just like we see you regular season, George. You better keep it up.
Yeah, exactly.
And if we're wrong, then we won't apologize.
I think at the end of the day, I think all NBA fans or NBA fans in general want to see a Los Angeles Lakers versus Clippers Western Conference Finals with the Lakers winning.
For sure.
With the Lakers winning, obviously, because nobody wants to see the Clippers in the finals.
Billy Crystal and the other 10 guys.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Nobody wants to see them in the finals, but a Western Conference Finals with those two, everybody wanted to see that in the bubble last year after Kawhi and Paul George went there. Everybody wants to see it again this year.
And maybe some Utes.
Hey, Fred VanVleet got that one right.
Yes, by the way.
Oh, man.
You know, we're in the Western Conference talking about the Clippers. Portland, man, they just can't catch a break. Like they're
a rough patch.
went out and did so much work in the offseason trying to like sign in all these guys and all this stuff. CJ McCollum was off to his best career start in the NBA, and he breaks his foot or he fractures his foot, whatever it is, and he's out for at least 4 weeks. Josef Nurkic breaks his wrist. He's out for at least 6 weeks. I mean, I don't know what that does to their playoff chances. I mean, they were just teetering on the brink of playoffs. They were 2 games above 500 before the injury.
They're still about 500 right now.
Yeah, they're 2 games above 500, but their game got postponed tonight.
Yeah,
because of COVID, right? So,
yeah.
But like, what does this mean for Portland going forward? Like, you're talking a combined 10 weeks with 2 of their starting players. Their bench really hasn't stepped up like the guys they've had, Derek Jones, and I think they picked up Covington, I think too, right?
Yep.
He's been nowhere to be found, more or less.
And that was my underrated pick from the offseason.
Exactly, and he's been like nowhere to be found so far this season.
So he's gone Kyrie.
Yeah, like, well, he's been there. He just hasn't been there, like, playing in terms of
Kyrie light.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. What does it mean for their playoff? Like, what does it mean for their playoff chances going forward? Like, they're already in a tough Western Conference. It's 10 weeks out of the season that's already shortened to 72 games. We know there's still the play-in game and stuff like that, and they were able to do it at the end of the year last year. But what does this mean for their playoff chances? Like, I don't know. I don't know what it means for them. I mean, they're just unlucky, to be honest. Poor Damian Lillard.
Are they unlucky? Because before I answer your question, why were they teetering around 500 when they had those guys healthy?
Well, they weren't getting the secondary scoring that they were hoping to get from guys like Covington,
okay,
Derek Jones Jr.,
okay,
Gary Trent,
all right,
Carmelo Anthony.
So if they were near or hovering around 500 with those guys and they weren't producing, what the hell are they going to do without them?
Right, exactly.
So the answer to your question is they're in trouble.
Yeah.
They're in trouble. They need now to actually stay in or above 500 until CJ comes back, right? Because if they are playing, 3 games under or 4 games under 500, in the West, that might as well be 6, 7, 8 games under 500. And yes, I understand the play-in is still a factor, but my point is this. A team like Portland, if you just put the team on paper, they should not be a 500 team. No. And I think that now, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the second year that we're talking about Portland being, are they going to get in the playoffs? Can they get in? And if they do, are they like, at some point we have to say, okay, what the hell is going on here? Right? This team is way too talented. Like they are the Raptors, but with talent. And I say this with all due respect because they have everything that they should have going, if they play well, go for them, but they're 500. I don't get it. Like that team is very weird. I don't know if, and I hate to say this, if it's time for a different voice. I'm talking about Terry Stotts, but because he's a good coach, but sometimes there's an expiry on everybody, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know what this means is that this team is really, really going to struggle to stay above 500 or at 500. And in the Western Conference, that's a problem. The next 4 to 6 weeks may be their season. And that sounds dramatic, but it's a fact because if they get behind the 8 ball, by the time CJ comes back and gets back into game shape, knock on wood that nothing else happens with COVID and postponing games, etc. That's a problem. I think Portland is looking at the next 4 to 6 weeks to be very critical for the remainder of the season. And I think that's, to me, this might be the end of them.
I mean, losing guys like CJ and Nurkic obviously hurts the team for sure. But over the past two seasons, this team has developed a trend of having a really slow start. And as you said, Marco, on paper, this team is not a 500 team. Like, this is a way better team on paper.
Right.
So what does it mean for the team? They're in somewhat of a trouble, yes, but what does it really mean is that the guys got to step up, next man up. They they got to do what they got to do to stay above 500 until as you mentioned, the other guys come back. So it does hurt them a little bit. As Marco mentioned, they haven't really been playing too well. They're still just hovering like 2 games above 500.
Right.
So
which is not bad, but I don't think
yeah.
it should be 8 and 6.
Yeah. I mean, last season they were like Nurkic was out, I think, in the start, but I think they were like 3-11 or 4-11 or something like that. Yeah. They've just been having, I don't know, it's they just can't get a break, and they've just been having bad starts. But again, it's next man up. They guys got to step up and do what they got to do for this team to keep them out of the red until the guys that are injured are back.
Yeah, but it's a tall task for a team. I mean, they're 8 and 6, but I mean, at the end of the day, there's a huge drop off in terms of points per game. You got Lillard at 28.
Yeah, and more and Lillard too.
Right, and McCollum was at 26. Then the next closest guy is averaging 12.2 points a game, and that's Carmelo Anthony. Josef Nurkic wasn't doing anything prior to him getting hurt. You know what I mean? He was averaging under 10 points a game. That's your big man, and he's your starting big man. You need to have him averaging more than 10 points a game. You can't just rely on. That's been the staple of the Portland Trailblazers for the last few years. That they've relied on Damian Lillard, they've relied on CJ McCollum to do all the heavy lifting, and they haven't had players to back them up and come off the bench. And that's what they thought they got with Derek Jones Jr. and Covington and Gary Trent and all that, but it hasn't worked out for them. And losing McCollum, that's going to hurt, because if nobody can step up and cover that point total, they're in a world of hurt, and they're going to be near the bottom of the pack. And soon, if things don't change, or if somebody doesn't step up, like you said, Mark, I just don't see them. It's a tough Western Conference too. You're not talking about the Eastern Conference, where they might pick up a win or two against Cleveland, Detroit, whatever, Chicago, all those teams. You're talking about, you have to win a lot of games against your Western Conference opponents, who aren't easy to beat.
So, and some of them on back-to-back, right?
Yeah.
Some of them back-to-back with the schedule, right? So
and like you said, with COVID around too, right? You know what I mean? Like, might lose players here and there, or postponements like you had today for the Blazers. So I don't know. It's going to be tough for them to make the playoffs this year. For me.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, but it's going to be interesting to see who steps up and fill the spots, because obviously there are more shots up for grab now. There are more minutes up for grab, so it's going to be interesting to see.
That's where your depth gets tested, right? So
yeah.
By the way, somebody better tell Charles Barkley to see if he held on to that receipt, because his bet right now is in danger.
What was his bet?
He bet like. What did he bet? Like $1 million that the Portland Trailblazers would come out of the West?
Probably. I could see him doing that.
Yeah, I think he did it on FanDuel or something like that.
I don't know if I would have even put $5 onto that.
I'll fact check that. Yeah.
You know what? We were just talking about COVID there for a second. I mean, COVID, I don't know what it is, but it seems like COVID is just like running rampant through the NBA, and I brought it up last weekend, and I don't know if it's the NBA's protocols are too strict, or if the players just aren't following the rules. I'm leaning more to the players just aren't following the rules 100% like they should be, because there's no way that all these players, you had another 11 players test positive this week, 16 the week before. So it's not like they're getting 1, 2, 3. You're talking double-digit tests, and a lot of them are coming from the same team. So I mean, I don't know what's going on with COVID and why it's so bad in the NBA, and that like they've had to cancel games like left, right, and center. We talked about it a little bit earlier in terms of us in our group chat. Do you guys think the season will be postponed? What do you think is going to happen, dude, with all these postponements? Like, we're talking about 16 games already so far this season.
16 games in what, 3 weeks?
Yeah.
3 weeks, 3.5 weeks, whatever the case is. I still think that based on what we have been discussing, and even last week, that I think they're going to try to push through until March. right, or wherever the break is,
season and
right, based on the fact. And I think the more we talk and the more I see this and think about it, is I think the reason that they only release the first half of the schedule is for a reboot, a possibility of either a pause or B, some sort of reconfiguration in the schedule. Maybe you just go east all the way the second half and west all the way. So basically the west stays in the west and the east stays in the east. I don't know. Who knows? Or again, the bubble thing. Again, the more we think about it and read up on it, it doesn't seem likely for the regular season. I really do think that they're going to try to push this through. But maybe a pause is possible. Try saying that twice. By the time we get to the first break. But this is a problem, obviously, because you could only postpone so many games and try to make up games. It's not like baseball where you can have double headers, right? They're going to have to figure something out. I'm sure that they have a contingency plan, but this is a bit of a challenge. And again, I don't know if players are respecting the protocols. Obviously, maybe not. It's sad because we all want to watch basketball, but we all want to also make sure that everybody's healthy, right? And I think that's the first thing. And you have to take money aside and all that stuff, right? Like whatever it is, what it is. These guys earn the right to make what they make. But at the same time, some of these guys have to go out and respect what everybody else is going through, right? So, and I don't want to pinpoint it on one person, but for example, Kyrie, 2 weeks ago was spotted partying, without his mask, right? And to me, that's irresponsible, right? And at least the perception of responsibility. Just help us out. Help out everybody else. If you're one of the elite players or a leader on your team or on the league, just set the tone, man. And right now, I don't think the tone has been set enough from a lot of these players, and that's why a lot of this shit's going on. And as fans, if we want to watch the game, I'll be honest with you, I'd rather just have the league pause and everybody figure their shit out than we constantly go through this nonsense and guys getting sick or et cetera, et cetera. And I can guarantee you, if somebody asks Karl Anthony Towns what should be done, right, especially what he has gone through this year,
and going through
himself after losing 6 members of his family, including his mom, and now this, I can guarantee you almost that he would say people are not respecting what needs to be done.
I mean, you could see and you could tell, which is why there are so many cases right now. If they were just doing the right thing, what needs to be done, it wouldn't be like that. I mean, how you realize the Raptors don't have this problem, right? You've never heard the Raptors name call and any of this stuff. It's because they have discipline. And as I said in the last episode, it's too bad the politics got so mixed up in the health and safety of people and others. People not wanting to wear their mask and again, and as I mentioned in our chat, it's the pandemic fatigue. It's been one long year. It's been 1 year, and we've all been locked up in our houses.
Yeah,
they've been locked up in. They were locked up in the bubble. They got the shortest break ever. Now they're playing without fans still. The NBA just put out new rules and regulations to follow, so can't leave their hotel and stuff like that. I mean, at some point you do get tired of it, but at this point in time now, when it's worse than what it was before, it's not time for us and anyone to let down our guards. It's time for everyone to follow the guidelines, follow the rules, and just stick to it. I mean, yes, it's rough, it's hard, it's not the norm. We aren't used to it, and you get tired of this. But I mean, if we don't do what we're supposed to do and know we should do, then it's just gonna be like this forever. And the more we follow the rules and guidelines, the quicker this thing will be done, and we'll go back to what we used to.
Well said.
Yeah, and I agree. And at the end of the day, if the season does persist, you're playing the game to win an NBA championship. You know what I mean? You're not playing the game just for fun. I mean, most players do You know, they've grown up playing it. They love playing the game of basketball. But you're not playing it just for fun. You're also playing it to win an NBA championship. You're getting paid to win an NBA championship. You're getting paid to play. So unfortunately, if you have to suck it up, you have to suck it up and do it. You can't just keep complaining about it and just doing whatever you want, hoping that, you know what, the NBA is going to force their hand and shut down the league for 2 weeks.
And it's not like just sucking it up for no reason. This is for the better good of not just the league, but an entire country and just a fellow citizens and colleagues, right?
Yeah.
And if you do something that you love that much, just playing the game, you know, just for the love of the game, then you're going to have to make some sacrifices as well, right?
Agreed.
You can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, I agree.
I don't know. To me, is maybe the protocols were not harsh enough to begin with, and people are like, "Well, if I can do this, why not?" Right? I can bring in randoms into my room, and that's a whole different conversation. But right, James Harden?
I would love to work my own hours, set my own hours to work, but
you kind of do now, don't you?
Schedule, so
you don't do that right now.
No, we're not going to talk about it.
We can't even air that right now.
Yeah, there's rules to follow. I mean, things are getting so bad. Just follow the rules. Stick with it. We'll get through it at some point. It will get better.
Yep.
So, you know, we're what? Only 3, like you said, 3.5 weeks in, almost 4 weeks in. But I mean, some players have already put themselves in MVP status so far, like in terms of MVP status. So who are you guys like so far, your front runners, or so to speak, your contenders for the MVP trophy, the early MVP trophy, I should say, because I mean, it's a long season. There's still a lot of games to go, but.
Well, I mean, last week, we talked about, you know, the best center in the league and this and that and et cetera, et cetera. But right now, I think for me, it's Kevin Durant. I think Kevin Durant has just completely just taken over. And we sort of talked about this in a previous podcast, but the guy has come back like he's never left.
Yep.
Right. And it's amazing. And again, this is what happens when you have an elite athlete. And people forget this guy is not a small guy. He's not a small guy. This guy's a 7-footer.
Yeah.
He's playing like he's 6'4", 6'5", moving around like a cat and just dropping 28. He's shooting almost, correct me if I'm wrong and fact check me, almost 50% from downtown. Like he's shooting 80% from the free throw line or above that. I might have shortchanged him. My goodness, 90. If he's not the MVP, again, things can change and hopefully not as far as injuries and all that stuff. But as far as right now, to me, not only is he the MVP, he might be the comeback player of the year. And to me, it's not even close. Like, and yes, you're going to have the Joker and other guys balling out right now in regular season. George, you're going to have to throw him in there for now. But KD has just completely just torched the league. And it's scary to think that this guy just came off a major injury. So to me, my choice is 2 awards. You only ask for 1. Returning, what do you call it? Comeback player of the year. Yeah. Clearly, I can't even get the words out of my mouth. And MVP is KD.
Yeah. No, hands down. Obviously, you guys know KD's my favorite player. I've been so excited for him to.
I thought it was Paul George.
No, wrong year.
Wrong brother.
No pandemic in this house, eh?
No, not at all. Okay. No, I've been so excited and excited for him to come back and to see him play again. I mean, that guy's just something special.
Beast.
He's averaging almost 31 points per game.
Whew.
Free throw, he's 87%, almost 90% from free throw line. He's 48% from 3. Okay. He's 54% field goal shooting. Like, come on, man.
That's dirty.
Off a major injury too. This guy hasn't played for almost a year and a half, and he comes back like he didn't take a day off. I mean, that has to be scary. And LeBron, AD, Giannis, all these guys need to watch out for KD, because he's definitely, if he continues to play the way he's playing right now, he's definitely winning that trophy without a doubt. for sure.
Yeah, I think he's running away with it, to be honest with you right now. I mean, he's got the second most assists in his career so far this season. He's like you said, Mark, he's shooting over 50% from the field.
Sorry to mention, he's averaging 34 or almost 35 minutes per game too.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
playing a lot of minutes.
that might be the most impressive stat.
Yeah. Coming off an injury.
No, and exactly. Maybe, did Kyrie learn from him? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like he came back and it was like he never even missed a beat. KD's just been outstanding so far this season. And don't get me wrong, Nikola Jokic averaging a triple-double.
There it is.
Right. I'm just saying it. I'm not giving it to him. I think Kevin Durant is a runaway favorite in my opinion for it. If the Nuggets were doing a little bit better, I would say, okay, you know what? Maybe I'll give it to Jokic right now. But they're 7-7. If without him, they'd be dead in the water, right? But I gotta say, Kevin Durant is just running away with it right now. I mean, averaging 31 points a game. It's like he hasn't missed a beat. He's dominating every time he's out there. He's bullying people, so to speak. It's not like he's just going out there and he's shooting up 30 shots a game. He's doing it efficiently.
He's getting into his spots. He's getting his shots.
Well, to shoot almost 49% or close to 49% from 3-point line, that's absolutely ridiculous. Like that's
can't guard that guy
for a 7-footer.
Yeah, for a 7-footer, that's deadly. That's deadly shooting. Like there's nothing like that's like a sniper right there.
Yeah.
By the way, speaking about the Nets, they're going into double overtime with Cavs, eh? Who would have think?
Yeah, and what do those guys have? Probably like 40 points each now, basically.
Durant has 36 and
36 points, yeah.
10. Kyrie has 33. And
Harden is
19 for your boy.
11
but he's got 11 assists.
19 and 11, right? So, I mean, the three of them are just going to be tough. Like I said, they're going to be tough to beat. Like I said, Kevin Durant, I think, and we all agree on that. He's just running away with it right now. I mean, Brooklyn isn't doing as well as they probably would have hoped, but I mean, they've been dealing with a lot of back-to-backs where Kevin Durant's been out and all the James Harden being traded, the Kyrie drama, and if he buys in and they come together, I think they're going to run away with that Eastern Conference title.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, easy.
So, one more thing before we go. Who has impressed you the most? Like, should say not most maybe most improved player, or who has impressed you the most? Like underrated player that's impressed you the most so far this season.
That's not named Chris Boucher.
Yeah, well, no, you can name Chris Boucher. Whoever's impressed you the most this season so far.
Then it's Chris Boucher. I think that he has really filled a void that the Raptors needed, and I still think they're going to work on that. But Chris Boucher has been played out of his mind. I don't care what the stats are today, this and that, but who would have? I don't know where this team would be. Funny enough, we talked about defense and stuff like that, but I'm talking about individual players, where they would be without Chris Boucher. He's been fantastic, guys. Like, honestly, like he's been great. And, you know, Randall has been good in New York, et cetera, et cetera. But I think Chris Boucher, to me, has been the biggest surprise of this NBA season because of the leap that he's made. And if you think about this, and just food for thought, he's averaging going into this game, I think about 15-5, 15-7, whatever the stats are, which are basically the same numbers that Ibaka was averaging last year.
Yeah.
Right. So it's, yes, I know that you still would love to have Ibaka and Boucher, but it's basically a swap. Right. And yes, you haven't really filled the Marc Gasol void, ironically enough. Right. But again, it's like if you just, you know, flip the two guys, you really haven't missed a beat in that sense.
Yeah.
It hasn't translated obviously for team wins as much as, you know, Raptor fans would love it. 5-8 going potentially into 5-9 tonight after we record this. But Chris Boucher to me has been a difference maker and the most impressive and perhaps the most improved player in the NBA.
I agree with everything you said about Boucher. He's just been impressive. I mean, I'd be lying if I say I expected all of this from Chris Boucher this season. I really didn't see it coming. He's just stepped up to, as you said, fill a void that the Raptors, that the team have. And he's just been probably the most improved player I've seen so far since the start of the season. But I also want to shout out to this guy that you also mentioned last week to Marco. It's Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal is leading the league right now with 5 more points per game than any player when it comes to scoring. I had no clue Bradley Beal would come back and be this good. He's averaging 34.9, 35 points per game.
Yeah.
KD's averaging 31 points per game. So, I mean, he came back. He hasn't really missed a beat. He's as I said, he's leading the league right now in points per game. So, just a little shout out to Bradley Beal.
Too bad his team stinks.
True.
I've been saying Christian Wood was the most underrated signing of the offseason. And he's played well. I can't put it, but the most improved player for me is Jeremy Grant. I mean, you're talking about a guy that's putting up 24 points a game. He's literally doubled his points per game total. He's playing good minutes. He's averaging almost 47% from the field goal percentage. About 86% from free throw. I mean, he's getting to the line. He's doing what he needs to do for Detroit. I got to give it to him as being the most improved player right now. For me, the runaway favorite for most improved player. Christian Wood, we kind of knew what he had, the potential that he had. Jeremy Grant wasn't really given a lot of time in Denver. He only started 24 games, and he only averaged 12 points last season. But he's, like I said, he's doubled his point per game total. He's also he's getting rebounds, and he's very efficient so far through the season. So my runaway favorite right now for being the most improved player has got to be, or like most improved in general, was be Jeremy Grant.
You said runaway, so it's not even close between him and Boucher.
No, I don't think so. Not right now. I mean, I love Boucher. Don't get me wrong. I think Boucher's good. I think that he's got the thing. I just think that Jeremy Grant has stepped into that starting role with Detroit, and he's playing on a really crappy team. Like, they're not a good team. And he's been able to be consistent, putting up points. Like I said, Chris Boucher has impressed me a lot in terms of what he's been able to do, whether it's putting up points, getting on the boards, blocking shots like an animal. I think he's probably a close second for me. I think he might be more in the running for Sixth Man of the Year, to be honest with you. So that's where I would have him, kind of in that category. But I think Jeremy Grant, just by far right now, unless he comes back to earth, is running away with that most improved player right now.
I guess we're just gonna have to wait and see how the season plays out, because a lot can happen, right? So
exactly. It's a 72 game season. We're only a quarter of the way through. So I mean, there's still lots of time left for players to put themselves back into that mix.
I was just looking at his numbers, and he has some impressive numbers. I mean, from December 26th, which was the 2 days after the season started, this guy's been scoring 20 points in every game since then.
Who? Jeremy Grant?
Jeremy Grant.
Yeah, like that's what I'm saying. I got him on my fantasy team, so I know what he's been. And there right? That's why, too.
He's trying to pump himself up for his personal agenda. This has nothing to do with Jeremy Grant.
No, I called Jeremy and I told him, you got to play well. I got you on my fantasy team.
Firing. There's always something behind it.
No, but in general, like I'm being dead serious. He has impressed me.
His numbers are impressive, though. Just looking at it right now.
He's been consistent over since the start of the season.
Just a quick hit here. We were talking about COVID, but FYI, it looks like the Washington Wizards are trying to push the league to postpone Friday's game against Milwaukee because of COVID concerns. Bradley Beal being the first guy, speaking of Bradley Beal, to speak out and saying that it's putting players in danger if they continue to play. So that's a story to keep an eye out. Maybe next week we'll talk about it if this game happened or not. But I anticipate that something's going to go down in the next 48 hours. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Basketball Lab podcast.
Let's go.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Basketball Lab podcast. Make sure to follow us on our social media. You could follow us on Instagram and Twitter at the B-Ball Lab.
You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Basketball Lab Podcast, and you could also find us on iTunes, Spotify, and Amazon Music.